Hello and welcome to the first edition of Puck Talk with Pickens and Turner for 2016.
Hmm.
I'm Dave Turner, along with Pat Pickens. Pat, we've made it to a whole new calendar year, which means we're going to get into some good hockey now. January is to me always when things start to pick up.
Hmm.
I think we've already seen it from the first few days of the calendar year here that there's a little bit of a different feel to it when the calendar changes.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, the irony is that the play has picked up in Florida where the weather hasn't changed at all. It's still in the 80s down there, or I guess in the 30s if you're listening to us in Canada, maybe the 40s. But I digress. I mean, that Winter Classic, Dave, was pretty wild. You look at what Montreal did to Boston. It was almost like they were this new team, and then all of a sudden, since then they're back to that same old problematic team. But Dave, what's coming up now that the Winter Classic has passed is the All-Star Game, and the All-Star Game has been a disaster. Basically, I mean, let's. I said this off air, and I'll start with this, Dave. The All-Star Game has been a disaster mostly because the NHL doesn't know what it wants it to be. The draft was great, but the players didn't apparently like it. The skills competition is probably the best part of it because you get everyone's excited, all the tomfoolery and whatnot, and then the game is just a mess. We talked about it a lot last year. The NHL unveiled All-Star Game jerseys on Wednesday morning, and I'm not a huge fan of them. They're black and gray. We'll post the pictures of them with it, on the website when we post this podcast. But Dave, it feels like there's a lot more that could have been done there.
Yeah, first off, I mean, this is something we've talked about before, is that baseball does a really good job with the jerseys that they wear, not usually for the game, but for the batting practice and the home run derby.
The hat.
Yeah, I think that, don't get me wrong, the cut is a little bit better. It's not as ridiculous as like the black and
Or those
snot
teal
green ones they've had. Yeah, and the teal ones too. But why are you making it gray? I mean, Nashville's color is a nice blue. The yellow and blue work really well together. Why not make a blue jersey with the yellow accents, kind of like the reverse of Nashville's or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, look, we've certainly talked about uniforms before. I happen to be someone who is way more obsessed with the uniforms that teams around the sports realm wear than I probably should be, but I'm not a fan of those. But should I really be surprised? When was the last time they made a good All-Star jersey?
Probably the early 90s when the Wales and the Campbell Conference were playing each other, right? Have you seen those?
Those are pretty cool. I'd rock one of those if I had it.
I was going to say, why don't they go – they could, get a – go back to one of those in the not so near future. Dave, we let's see. I want this 3-on-3 thing to work just because it's so innovative and we love the 3-on-3. But you have to think that at some point, given how the Winter Classic is struggling ratings wise, and also how the All-Star Game is just kind of a mess, that the marriage of the two, taking the thing outside, it's got to be coming, right?
Yeah, I would think so, though I don't know if that's a good idea for either of them. I don't know if putting an All-Star Game outside makes it any better. The All-Star Game, I'm sorry, the Winter Classic, it is interesting because the numbers have gone down. And I think the biggest issue with that is the fact that they have very limited amounts of space that they can have that game. The only reason why they were able to have the Patriots this year, because they were away – before you need to set the ice. You can take it down pretty quickly, but you need to let it set for at least a week. I think it used to be 2, but they might have gotten better with that.
Yeah.
That you can't do it at most stadiums. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are other – look at Minnesota this year. They're playing it at the Gopher Stadium. To me, why is that not the Winter Classic? Why is it Boston and Montreal when Montreal's been in the Heritage and Boston's been in the Winter Classic already? I mean, to me, the idea is you should have ran through every untapped market before you go back. I mean, the idea of it being Rangers and Leafs next year, come on. I mean, who knows if that's going to be true or not, but really?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of talk on social media. There's a lot of theories out there. I think yours is an interesting one, Dave, because that's why Yankee Stadium never hosts it, is because they have the college football bowl game on the 20th. They've had it on the 26th the last couple of years, and you play that game, and then you can't have the ice set for January 1st. The NFL schedule, obviously, like you said, comes into play there too, because, like you said, the Patriots lost 2 home games at the end of the season because of that, and they lost both of them. So, I mean, make that of it what you will, but so I listen. We've talked about innovative ways that the Winter Classic can change, can be fixed. We saw how well the one at the Big House did, because it was the huge, the remarkable and incredible landscape and the fantastic venue, and but you're trying to change these venues, you're trying to make them different as the years go by. But like you said, they played the one at Dodger Stadium. I thought was awesome. But that was a Stadium Series game. I mean, I just don't get why you have the, I just don't get what the Stadium Series brings to the table. It seems like, if you want to expose all your great hockey markets, put them in the Winter Classic. I mean, it certainly won't hurt anyone to have Minnesota host the Winter Classic. It won't kill anyone for Columbus to host the Winter Classic. I mean, especially if you put the NBC team against that team, like if you put Pittsburgh. I mean, we talked to Jack Johnson last year about what it would mean to him to host the Winter Classic in Columbus against a team like the Red Wings with that whole Detroit and Ohio rivalry. I mean, he gushed about it. It's just, it seems like, it's got to be entirely NBC, because NBC is desperate for a rating on this game, and the NHL is desperate, enough to go along with them there. But what would it hurt? I mean, it would only strengthen your market in that city. It would also inspire and get the fans behind that game and get them excited. I mean, you're not ever gonna not sell out a Winter Classic.
No.
So why not? Get the Winter Classic. Let's face it, Dave. It's all about the venue, because if it's played anywhere else, it's just another hockey game. But the Winter Classic has this cachet because it's outside in these incredibly, interesting venues, these not made for hockey venues with sightlines. If you look at NHL Social the day before, they had Doc Emmerich touring the Patriots place. It was this kind of cool thing where hockey and football meshed, or the mask that Rask had Tom Brady on it. And the whole thing with Brady tweeting about he's going to wear Rask's pads next time, for a game next year. It's just this kind of intertwined thing where you get the football, or you get the baseball, and you get the hockey. Like, you hear Ed Olczyk, all he did was talking football lingo the whole time, or the baseball lingo when it was at Fenway Park. I mean, there's so many great historic venues. And the other interesting thing to me, and then I'll shut up about this, is as sports evolve to retractable roofs entirely in this country, because the weather is not great. And let's face it, baseball wants retractable roofs so it has fewer rainouts. There's going to be fewer and fewer legitimate venues to host this game. So, I think, Dave, the future of this game is in some serious doubt. Maybe not for it being canceled, but like the legitimacy of it. They're kind of at a crossroads here where the ratings have been bad 2 years in a row. They've kind of had these makeshift venues where you look at it, almost peaked at the Big House, but then you get this kind of weird game last year with the Hawks and Caps, and this year the venue wasn't great, the game wasn't great. You get the Canadians and Bruins, which the rivalry is great, but the Canadians sap kind of half of that rating, and now you've had 2 really bad ones in a row.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an issue. To me, my biggest problem with it is I think the Stadium Series has watered it down.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's the issue, because look, if you could have had, I know they couldn't have played the Winter Classic in Minnesota this year because the Vikings were using that stadium, and it turns out they are home anyway, so they definitely couldn't have done it. But why not have Minnesota next year? Why not have Coors Field the year after? Instead of burning through your last two really big markets, which, don't get me wrong, there's a few other ones that you could throw in there. Like
they still haven't had one in Detroit yet.
St. Louis, Detroit. Yeah, but Detroit, Detroit has been.
There's not a venue either. Or Comerica, I guess, right?
Yeah. And to me, it's about trying to make it more unique. That, oh wow, we're in the one outdoor game this year. I think the Stadium Series, don't get me wrong, they're trying to appease all the fans and to give the fans of those areas. Because look, if you're a Minnesota or a Colorado fan, you're loving the fact that you're going outdoors this year. It's going to be like -5 degrees. I mean, your spit's going to freeze, but it's going to be awesome. So,
but think about how much we both love the game at Yankee Stadium, or the games at Yankee Stadium.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it from an enjoyment standpoint it's not great, but I think that in terms of the TV rating, when you're trying to pry people away from college football and hangovers on New Year's Day, it loses some of its luster.
I agree. We'll go back to the All-Star game, Dave, because there was a really interesting development earlier this week, or last week, I guess, when the captains of the teams were announced. And, there were a couple of, speaking of that Winter Classic from last year, there were a couple of brand names, Patrick Kane and Alex Ovechkin, and even Jaromir Jagr, who is the oldest player in the NHL at the moment, is going to be the captain of the Atlantic Division. Dave, John Scott is going to be the captain of the Pacific Division. Is this more emblematic of the Pacific Division struggles, or are NHL fans just trolling here?
I think it's just trolling. I mean, look, it's happened before. You can get.
Last year it happened too.
Yeah, I mean, you can go on Reddit or some other message boards, HF boards, and get people to all of a sudden be like, "Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's vote in Gordon Bombay for all we know." I think someone, Jeff O'Connor, who works on some of the Devil stuff with me and you as well, put it best. If you have a major problem with John Scott being an All-Star Game captain, find a hobby. I agree. I mean, really, at the end of the day, who cares? I mean, look, how great is it going to be when he ends up ripping a shot past Henrik Lundqvist or something like that? Because, I mean, I'm sure they're going to feed him the puck. The players are probably going to make it into a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, watch. He's going to have some great play, or he's going to look really bad, and it's going to be a meme, and it's going to be everywhere. I think it just adds more pizzazz to it. Why not?
Yeah, if nothing else, it gets people talking about the event and the spectacle about it, which, we were both pretty excited about.
Yeah, I like it, actually. Maybe after 1 year of seeing it, I'm going to kind of be over it. But the idea of 3-on-3 and just letting these guys who are so super skilled play in a game that they're going to be able to really dangle and kind of do their thing. The only idea is it's going to make guys tired. I mean, that's a lot of. I don't know what the exact.
It's only 20 minutes. It's only a 20-minute game.
Yeah, so but even then, though, I mean, these guys are going to get a little tired, I think.
No, of course they will. But the other thing too is I think that people forget is they dangled the $1 million there for the winning team. So I think that's the biggest thing is that there's not that the All-Star game has become this thing where guys play and they don't play defense and they score a lot of goals. And they don't have any – other than that, it's just kind of like – it's worse than a preseason game. It's worse than an exhibition game. But now you put $1 million on the line, and that might be a problem because guys might get hurt. But, that because – but if you watch if you watch that Pittsburgh and Chicago 3-on-3 on Tuesday night in Pittsburgh, you realize how great this can be and this will be if you get the most skilled player. I mean, you look at what they were – whirling, they had it was Taves and Kane and Hjalmarsson. The Chicago started with, and Pittsburgh countered with Crosby, Kunitz, and Letang. And then, who was next for Pittsburgh? It was Malkin and Kessel. And Chicago's coming back with Panarin and Hossa. I mean, it's just all these elite. I mean, that's what the All-Star Game is going to be. And if it's played at any kind of level, it's going to be really exhilarating. I think it sounds like Nashville is going to be a really great host for it. Just because Nashville is one of the more underrated markets. Those fans are pretty rabid down there when they get into it, and it's also watch. A lot of people are talking about watching their livers while they're down there because it's one of the more.
I'll actually be down there 2 months from today.
I think I'm going to be down there in about 3 months. So we'll. It's a shame we can't get down there for that, but if nothing else, we'll get a sense of what it's like.
Yeah,
And
it's gonna be a real nice place for the game.
I think the hilarious thing though is Yager still with the tweets and stuff. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I just because he's also kind of on a roll here, and he really deserves to be an All-Star this year. He's leading the Panthers in points, and they're the best team, and that kind of is a segue, isn't it, Dave?
I would think so. I mean, wow, have they been good? I mean, this isn't even like that's so cute. This
Cute
young
little
team
Panthers.
No, I mean they're 10-0 in their last 10 games. I don't think there's anyone in the entire league that wants to play this team right now. They've gotten quietly elite level goaltending from Roberto Luongo this year. Look at his numbers; they're good. They're very good. They have the ageless wonder in Jaromir Jagr scoring goals. Alexander Barkov at times has been spectacular. He scored a goal the other day that was just like mind-boggling. I mean, it was fantastic. And the same cast of characters are all growing now. They're all becoming better. We've talked about them a lot because it's just an amazing story that you had this team that shows that even in a small market, if you draft well and you get the right kind of veterans, you can start to have success. I'm not sure if they're even going to win a playoff series. Who knows? But right now, this is the hottest team by far playing in the hottest market right now in the NHL. And the Panthers have been great.
It shows that if you have good people in your organization, good things will happen. Dale Talon built the Blackhawks from scratch, basically.
Yeah.
With a bunch of great draft luck. And they had some good draft luck, too. They got Aaron Ekblad. But the other thing, too, is, Dave, look at the teams who they've beaten in this stretch. The streak started at Brooklyn with the Islanders, where do you know how many teams have beaten have beaten the Islanders in regulation this year? The Islanders have lost 6 games in regulation this year, and they've all been against Atlantic opposition. So it's like they've lost like 5 games. They've lost to like 5 teams at home this year. So they started there. They beat the Devils. They dominated the Devils. So it was 5-1, 5-1. They won in Carolina. Carolina is like not a fun team to play against. Came home and beat the Canucks. Beat the Senators 2-1. Kind of put them on that little slide there. Columbus, Montreal. You mentioned Luongo, a 40-save shutout against the Rangers Saturday night. Then the next night they played the Wild and beat them, and then they went to Buffalo and won on Tuesday night. So. This team is smoking hot. They're beating good teams.
They have a long road trip that they've just started now, too.
Yeah, with Western Canada, there aren't going to be too many people tuning in for some of these games, like at Edmonton or at Calgary. But I think what's really best about this, and because so much gets down there, and let's face it, off the hop they were pretty bad to start. But they're quietly, moving up here a little bit. They're averaging more than 14,000 fans per game now. So, and a month ago that was in the mid-13s. So as this team gets better, and let's face it, there's not a lot of positive pro sports stuff happening in South Florida right now. With the Heat are okay, not great, not exactly the same team they had a couple of years ago. With Yager, with Luongo, there's personality there, and then there's all these young players. I mean, this isn't even their year either.
No. I mean, the goaltending, though, when Luongo finally hits the wall, might be an issue for them. But
I mean, even Al Montoya has been really good for them.
Yeah, he has. This is a team that, as we've said it before, every night they get better. They have a road trip now that has some pretty tough games. I think they have like 5-6 more games on the road to go. If they can survive this, and I mean, why not? They've been 10-0 in their last 10 games. If they can get through this with 3-4 wins and get back home for a while, then this team, look, they might run away with this division because none of the teams in that division under them right now are exuding any sort of good play here. I mean, Boston has their issues. Montreal has their issues, though I would think with the goaltender back, maybe they could figure it out. Detroit has been up and down. I know Ottawa has really fallen off. Look, they could win this division by 10 points this year.
Yeah, yeah, and
But
get to play them and the Bruins in the first round would be a lot of fun.
it would be. But sticking with the wonderful sunny state of Florida that we all wish we were in right now, across the way, the team that came up 2 games short of winning a cup last year, Jonathan Drouin, not happy with the Tampa Bay Lightning. His agent has requested a trade. Usually when I hear that, it bothers me. And I think this is the case here as well. I hate the idea of a player basically coming to his agent and saying, look, we don't like it here anymore. I feel like you have to put in your time. I know that there's speculation all over the league. I mean, there was reports that the Devils and the Lightning had scouts in each other's buildings. St. Louis, he's been linked to. But
Flyers, the Leafs. Everyone's going to the Leafs, right?
Of course. I mean, the Flyers and the Leafs are in on everyone, right? Here's my issue with this. He had a decent season 2 years ago. Last year. We have not exactly seen him to be a star yet. Even when he's come in, he has not proven that he's anything more than a good player. This is a good offensive team when they're playing well in Tampa. At least they were last year. To me, there might be a reason why he hasn't made this roster. Whether it's being able to play 3-zone hockey, whether it's how he fits into the room as a young kid, maybe he's a little bit of a hothead. I would think that there might be a reason, not just with his play, but maybe outside of it as well, as to why he hasn't been consistently in that lineup every night. Because look, you would think a lineup that nurtures offense like Tampa, at least up until their struggles this year, that he would be able to come in there and be a good part of that. I don't know. To me, I think it's a selfish thing when you request a trade, especially, it's one thing if you're a guy who you're Eric Stahl and the team's going nowhere and you've proven yourself for a decade. But this is a guy that really has done nothing if you want to really look at it for what it is. He's done nothing in the league and he says, I don't want to be here.
He's not even allowed to drink legally in the United States right now. He's still like 2.5 months off from that. I definitely agree with you. I read a thing by our buddy Dan Rosen from NHL.com about how he basically saying the exact same thing, that you got to earn your stripes in this league, and you put him in a spot in Tampa. They put him with Stamkos earlier in the year, and he didn't deliver. And then John Cooper's grabbing at straws here in the dark, trying to figure out how to get this team to go. But Dave, Tampa Bay's messed with him a little bit here. I mean, they started with him on a fourth. I mean, this is a guy who had consecutive 100-point seasons in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, which is widely considered, not the skill league that the Ontario Hockey League is, that the Western Hockey League is. There's a reason this guy was drafted 3rd overall a couple of years ago, and if you look at any of the forwards drafted in the top 15, only Max Domi has played fewer games than Jonathan Drouin. And if you want to draw that out a little bit further, of all the players, all the forwards, there's been a few forwards who haven't gotten any time from the first round. But Jonathan Drouin's a first-round talent, was a top 5 talent, was a number 1 overall caliber talent when he was coming out of the queue. And, to put him on your fourth line, to put him in there and say, hey, play fourth line, it's not easy. And to put him in there, to take him in and out of the lineup all this time, it feels like they're messing with him a little bit here. They played 70 games last year, and then all of a sudden last year in the playoffs, he played 3 playoff games where he played 6 playoff games where they were pulling him out, to get that 7th defenseman in, to get Nikita Nesterov, and his 6 minutes a night, they're pulling Drouin out. Listen, you're probably right, and there probably is merit. There probably is more than meets the eye here because, I'm not around that team every day. You're not around that team. None of us are around the team every day. And, if Cooper and Steve Yzerman's, bright guy. If these guys say, if these guys agree that there's something that's not there with this guy, whether it's work ethic, whether, like you said, whether it's defensive responsibility, whether it's something else, but then it's their right to send him down. It's their right anyway to send him down. But and I agree with you that it's wrong that for a 20-year-old kid to request a trade, like this is a kind of a crossroads moment for him where he can accept his assignment in Syracuse, go play and show the organization that he deserves to be in the NHL, and it goes from there. And I kind of think that's probably what will happen. But at the same point, you don't want to have the reputation around the league of being a skill guy who doesn't play, or who doesn't play in all three zones, and who won't, be flexible with an organization at 20 years old.
Yeah, and here's my question, though. If you're a team, before we wrap this up here, if you're a team that is going to trade for him, and look, they might decide to trade him because the asking price, might keep going up and up because a lot of teams get involved. I mean, I'm sure teams would love a guy on an entry-level contract that has skill that could possibly be nurtured. If the price keeps going up, there's maybe 3-4 teams seriously involved, I think they might make that trade. But if you're a team, we've heard St. Louis, and who knows if they're even remotely interested, but we've heard that name. Even like the Devils or a couple other teams that are Nashville is one, or even the Leafs and Flyers that are always in the mix.
Yeah.
Is this a guy that you necessarily want to give up a lot for? Because that's probably where it's going to end up. If he gets traded, I think A, they'd have to be blown away with the deal. And B, you think about for the team that gets him, what does that do for your lineup? All of a sudden, this kid comes in who already has requested a trade. He comes in. Chances are the guy who he's coming in for is probably older than him, at least by a couple years. Yeah. What does that do to your room? I mean, obviously, we don't know what kind of kid he is. He could be the greatest kid in the world that's just frustrated. But just in terms of that idea and bringing in a guy that you're going to have to give up a decent amount for. I mean, I'm not sure what the asking price would be, but it's going to be pretty high. Do you think that it would be a risk for a team to give up something decent to insert him into their lineup mid-season if that happens?
Well, yeah, especially considering the fact that he doesn't want to go to the American League. Like, I mean, if you're pulling in a guy, think about how many like legitimate veterans have been put on waivers this season. Like Tanner Glass, for instance. I mean, I know he's not very good, but Tanner Glass is a veteran in this league. Played playoff performer, been to the playoffs a few times, been there and whatnot, and they put him on waivers, the Rangers did, and sent him down. I mean, those types of guys. And what did he do? He accepted his assignment, and look what happened. He made it back to the league. Jared Stoll, Stanley Cup winner, put on waivers. I know, claimed by another team. But these guys, they accept their assignments because they're pros, and they realize that's what it takes to stay in this league. They got to be flexible. You're not just doing it for one organization. I mean, I know at 20, Drouin probably appreciates the fact, or doesn't appreciate what he's doing right now. Thinking that this is kind of the end of the world, and he wants to be in Tampa, and he wants to make, if nothing else, show like, hey, hello, I'm still here. But hockey's is a fraternity, as much as any other sport, and probably more so than other sports. So
no doubt.
when you piss off one guy, you're pissing them all off. So
I would love to hear a former player, because the guys now I think are going to toe the line.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear a guy like a recently retired guy who has played in this NHL, not the old man's NHL or whatever you want to call it. I would love to hear what they have to say about what their response to this kid would be, or if this kid walked into their room. What would you do with him? What's the first thing you say to him? I would love to hear that aspect, and maybe we'll try to get someone on for next week, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'll go into the Rolodex and try to find out. I have someone in mind. So, to me, that's just the thing is what are you getting yourselves into with a kid that is basically, for all intents and purposes, throwing a temper tantrum because he's not playing big boy hockey at 20 years old, when a lot of kids aren't playing big boy hockey at 20 years old.
Yeah,
I don't like it. I think you got to wait your turn. And you know what? It's not like he's 25 and he's like, all right, get me the hell out of the minors. He's not.
Yeah, there have been a lot of guys who flamed out in their early 20s because they can't they can't do some things, or they end up in the K.
Hey, what about Corey Conacher? Look at him, for example.
Yeah, I mean, in Tampa, too.
Yeah, I mean, he was part of that Ben Bishop trade that looks really good for.
I was going to say, if you're Steve Yzerman, you might say, hey, let's go do this. Let's trade John Druid for a guy who can help me now, because he's done it before. I mean, obviously, Conacher had less cash. I mean, I think Conacher is still in the American League. But he was in Bridgeport, the Islanders system last year. I don't know what he's doing. Well, let's go find out what's going on with Corey Conacher. We'll have that back to you next week. Dave, we're talking about successful teams, especially in non-traditional markets, and the Dallas Stars are one of them. And you look at – I had a little conversation on Twitter last night. I'm a little surprised that after years of being in Buffalo and playing with guys like Matthew Barnaby – and relying so heavily on Dominik Hasek, that Lindy Ruff's willing to play this fast and loose style. And good for him for letting that happen with the fast and loose style in terms of, letting his guys play. But, Dave, it seems like they're playing a little bit too fast and loose these days. They've lost 3 games in a row. They came to New York and got shellacked. They gave up, 15 goals in 3 games. They only got 1 point in 3. And let's face it, coming to New York is no picnic these days with the way the Devils play. And the Islanders are a tough team to play against. And if the Rangers are starting to find it, that's going to make coming to this area really difficult for road teams. But, Dave, Dallas has 1 point in their last 3 games. And their upcoming stretch, they home for Winnipeg, home for Minnesota, and then they go to California. By the way, no picnic. Is this a hiccup for them, or should we be worried about the Stars here a little bit? Especially with the Hawks breathing down their neck. I
would be worried just because I don't like their goaltending. Mm-hmm. Antti Niemi has been good, but they keep, but Letton has played his games, and he seems like he's regressing. I mean, he's barely, he's a .907 save percentage, wow. 2.85 goals against. And
is that regressing, or is that what he is?
I guess at this point it is what he is because of last season. But here's my thing is that this is not a great defensive team. This is a team that would rather get on their horse and gallop towards the goal. To me, I don't know if they could end up with 115 points for all we know and run away with this division. Even then, I don't think this team is necessarily built for playoff hockey. I really don't. And as the season gets tighter, maybe it's no surprise that we're into January now and games are slightly tighter as we're getting into the stretch run here. I don't know. I mean, this team, look, they have scorers. There's no doubt. I mean, look, Sagan, Ben are fantastic. Patrick Sharp has been really good. Klingberg has been otherworldly at times. I don't know if this team is necessarily built to play the, zone by zone hockey. They are built to just run up and down the ice. I think that they're going to struggle a little bit here. I could see Chicago passing them just because Chicago and even St. Louis in terms of regular season know how to get it done. I don't think it's such a conclusion that they're going to even win this division.
Yeah, if you're St. Louis, you have to be hoping to see Dallas in that first round, right?
With Jake Allen playing so well, why not?
Just so it's anyone but Chicago.
Yeah.
At this point, but no, I think there's merit to that. And you mentioned him, and it's obviously, but you look at those superstar players that Dallas, the Sagans and Ben's. Ben didn't have a point. Ben and Sagan, neither of them had a point on this road trip to New York. They got a couple goals from Sharp. And they got some production from, like you said, from Klingberg and some other guys. But if it's just it just shows that when their guys aren't firing, when their big guns are not firing, they're eminently beatable. And I don't think that I don't think they're in trouble by any stretch of the. I mean, they're not going to miss the playoffs. They have an 11-point lead on Minnesota right now. Well, actually, they have a 15-point lead on the 8th seed Nashville.
Yeah, they're not going to miss the playoffs, but to me, it's.
But we're finally starting to see the chink in the armor.
Yes.
With them, and I think that's something that you mentioned. Ken Hitchcock coaches defensive hockey. He's been coaching defensive hockey since he came in the league, And with that team and that, I mean, or Minnesota, like Mike Yeo could be looking at that and say, well, if we can get, put our top guys on their top guys and our top guys win, we can outscore them a little bit. I mean, no one's going to shut down Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn.
I think are they a team that can win 3-2 hockey games or 2-1 hockey games? I don't know if that's the case. That's my issue with them, is that I don't know if they can go out and win 3-2 4 times over a team in the series.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, is the goaltending – look, they're going to play a good team regardless of who they play at this point. I mean, they are. They're going to play – if it's Minnesota, Minnesota's a damn good team. They've won some playoff series. I don't know if they can do that.
They've stunned some favorites, too. I mean, a couple of years in a row. So, St. Louis and –
or even if it's Nashville, which it could certainly be Nashville, too.
They're a pain in the neck.
Pekka Rinne in that defense, I mean, you really want to tell me that they're going to hold that team to 2 goals every night? Because you're not going to score 4 or 5 goals in the playoffs. I mean, I'm sure at times they will, but you can't expect the goal scoring to be at 4 goals a game. You're going to have to win 3-2 hockey games.
This is also to your point, and I hate – I really hate making you sound right, but I'm going to do it. That you have to learn to win before – you have to learn – say it, Dave.
You have to learn how to lose before you can learn how to win.
Yeah.
So, and I always say it, but I know it. I think it's true.
Yeah, and in that regard, it's true, too, as this team evolves here. They were that upstart underdog, and they played a really good series against Anaheim a couple of years ago.
They did,
and they were in every game, and the Ducks broke their heart.
And so they learned how to lose
goaltending.
And now they have to learn how to win first. They're going to have to take their lumps. I could see them, winning a first-round series and then going up against Chicago and getting their doors blown off, because that's what Chicago does. I
could also see them losing in the first round.
It could happen. Happen.
Yeah, Dave, what are you looking forward to?
For me, it's the Capitals and the Rangers getting together for one on the 9th. Yeah, because to me, the Rangers, are they back? Well, their biggest Achilles heel right now is Washington, and Washington's been so hot. To me, if the Rangers want to even consider themselves as a possibility for getting first place in the Metro, they've got to win here. If not, Washington's going to just breeze to the finish. They're just going to build a lead. They're just not going to go away. I'm fascinated with this game just because I think the Rangers are finally starting to get it. Should be a spectacular game.
I was going to say, if the Rangers have visions of we act like the playoffs are a foregone conclusion with the Rangers, but they're closer to being out of the playoffs than they are to catching the Caps. So that's a good one to keep your eye on. I'm going to keep my eye on another game Saturday night. It's going to be Pittsburgh and Montreal, 2 NBC teams. But on hockey night in Canada, Montreal's struggling here a lot, and they've got a. They've let the Atlantic back into the pack is what's happened. So and Pittsburgh's rolling here, and Pittsburgh, granted they had that loss Tuesday night to the Blackhawks at home in overtime. They got another point. They're closing in on a playoff spot. They're just 2 back of the Devils as play begins Wednesday for the 7th spot for this first wild card in the Eastern Conference. They're only 1 point out of the Bruins. They have 1 game in hand on the Devils too. So Montreal kind of needs the points here because they're falling quickly out of a playoff spot too, as we pointed to them, needing that as a foregone conclusion. They're actually closer to being out of the playoffs than they are to the division leader as well. So, and Pittsburgh's hot on everyone's heels. They're on fire. They're playing well. Crosby's doing it again. Malkin and Kessel look like a good tandem, and that's going to be a fun game.
Absolutely. And just to note also, Minnesota is at Dallas. So there you go. We get a preview of what possibly could be the series that we're interested in. So, Pat, we'll be back. We're going to have some good stuff coming up over the next few weeks here. But that'll do it for now for Puck Talk. I'm Dave Turner along with Pat Pickens, and we will see you next week.